What is the difference between stress, anxiety, and trauma? That's what we're going to talk about next. A lot of times when I ask people, what is stress? They kind of look at me blankly as if like, well, don't you know? And the reason why I ask this question is because even though people hear the word stress, they don't always understand what it actually means. The best way that I've been able to describe it is stress is our emotional response to situations that are sometimes out of our control or sometimes in our control. It's how we emotionally react, basically, to things around us. Anxiety is when that stress starts to really overwhelm us and our body interprets that stress as a threat to our lives. And so it releases adrenaline and cortisol into the brain, which then activates our threat response. And this can cause our nervous system to get activated. We can start hyperventilating, to get extra oxygen into our body. And this is when we start to experience those physical signs of anxiety as we know it, those butterflies in the stomach and that feeling of being on edge, like something is just not right, and that sort of feeling on the back of your neck where your hair kind of rises. That is, really important part of our response as humans if we are actually at threat. If we're not, then it's not a very helpful response. Then we get trauma. So trauma is when you get too emotionally overwhelmed by a situation and you go into the threat response and your brain assesses that the emotions are too overwhelming in the situation, and so it pushes them down and locks them away in a deep, dark place inside your brain. And the physical sensations of those emotions get stuck in your body. And so it causes your body to always think that you're at threat. And because your body always thinks you're at threat, your brain always thinks you're at threat. And so it looks out for dangers. Oh, that person's, looking at me funny. Or, they frowned when I said something to them. So I don't think that they like me, or they're judging me, or, they're talking about me behind my back. And so we get really obsessive about thinking that terrible things are about to happen. And I've heard a lot of the experts refer to it as our body goes into a maladaptive response. So most people, they have different stages to their threat response. And so the normal stage that people are in your sort of rested state, that part where, you are safe, you are living your day-to-day life, and you are quite relaxed, relatively happy, and not feeling unwell or nervous or anything like that. Then we get the stage where you have the activation of your nervous system. And this is a stage where the brain releases those hormones, and that then results in us constantly looking out for danger. And it's commonly known in the public as your fight, flight, or response. And so you're really agitated emotionally. Your brain is very agitated. It's looking for danger constantly. And your body is in a physical response so that you can respond to that threat. So you can jump, or you can run, or you can fight the danger. And then we get the freeze response. And the freeze response is basically like a shutdown of your mind and your body. So you've got that chemical response happening in your body. You've got the chemicals being released in your brain. You've got those physical sensations of an activated nervous system, but your brain just doesn't know what to do in that situation, and it just becomes completely overwhelmed. And so you kind of go into a state of waiting, and you want to respond, but you don't know how to respond. But if you need to respond, you need to have the physical things. You need to be able to be faster, stronger. And so it needs the nervous system activated. It needs you to be releasing chemicals, taking in a lot of oxygen, things like that. But that energy is just kind of trapped in your body, and it's got nowhere to go. And your brain is just scrabbling and trying to figure out what to do. And your emotions are just getting really so overwhelming that your brain has to kind of push them down, and you get kind of flatlined is the best way to describe it. You stop feeling emotions because you don't really have the energy to feel emotions, because your brain's trying to decide what to do. And so you get emotionally flat. Now, if somebody tells you something sad, you're like, meh. Yeah, you don't feel anything. You know you should be sad for that person. You know you should be empathetic towards them or sympathetic towards them, but you can't. You just don't have that emotional ability to do that. But also, it's the same thing with positive things like joy and happiness. You can't really feel those either. You just, meh, again. You're just like, I should be enjoying this activity, but I'm not. I should feel happy, but I'm not. And so when you get into this flatline response, this freeze response, then your brain kind of goes, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get us out of this dangerous situation. But we can't stay like this. And so this is the point at which we get really, really low. And where we become at risk of having suicidal thoughts. It's a horrible place to be. And because your body's constantly having this physical response, you're burning a lot of energy, so you feel really fatigued. And so it's easy for people to say to you, well, go for a walk, go do this, do that. Because for them, it's easy to do it. But when you're in that state, you can't. You literally don't have the energy because your body is constantly burning energy, and not just normal energy. It's the same kind of energy as you would be burning if you were running a London Marathon in 5 minutes. But you're just constantly doing it So you're constantly burning that energy. And that then makes you feel worse as a result, because you're physically exhausted and you're just not able to cope with emotions. And so your brain has to just keep pushing those emotions down and down and down. And I kind of think that that's like where you're in a really bad stage of trauma, is when you are in that sort of constant state of just every day is the same, no day is different, you're feeling the same, you're doing stuff, but nothing brings you joy, nothing brings you, overwhelming sadness, you're not empathetic towards people, you're just you're surviving. And you don't even know that that's like different, because it's become your normal. That is your body's normal state when you are traumatized. You flip between this state, the freeze state, and the flight and fight response state, and you're just constantly going between the two. And you don't go into the relaxed state, the state of rested, present, happy, healthy state. And if you do go into that rested, happy, healthy state, your brain and your body perceive that as a threat. Which is ironic, because that's the thing that is actually going to be the safest for you. But because your body's gotten so used to being in that freeze response or being in the fight or flight response, that it doesn't understand that being relaxed and being happy is good for us, because that's not its normal. And our brain doesn't like anything that are different from our normal state. And so it starts to treat anything that could make us happy more and more as a threat. And so we tend to stay away from those things as a result. And then that tends to make us feel worse. And so then we go more into the fight and flight and freeze response. You get into this horrible cycle you just can't get out of. And that's what we call the maladaptive state. And once you realize that, hang on, my normal isn't actually normal. And what I thought was a threat is not actually a threat. And that I am capable of changing that. It's going to be a long journey, but I am capable of making that change and finding those moments of rested happiness and joy. I just need to teach my body and my brain how to get there. And so we can do that through lots of different types of things. So we can do it through getting control of our breathing. We can do it through sleep, because sleep is so important. It helps to get you out of the fight, flight, freeze response and into a rested state. And we can also do it through being mindful. So just really trying to actively be present. And in our current world that we live in, we're always encouraged to look forward or look backwards. But we're not really that encouraged that much just to be in the moment. How often do you actually just really spend time being present? when you're doing something. Just really doing that one activity and paying attention to what you're doing and how it's making you feel. And asking yourself, why am I doing this? Do I need to do it? Do I want to do it? And really just asking yourself these questions. Because when you start doing that, you start realizing that there's a lot of things that you do that you don't really want to do and you don't need to do. But you've just gotten into the habit of doing them. And our brain loves habit, even if it's bad habits. And it sees us changing that habit as a threat. And so we have to work really hard to change that habit. And it's not easy, but we can do it. And it's just little steps at a time. You know, when I was in therapy, they told me, meditate, Candice, it's so good for you, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, dude, I can't even, sit down 2 seconds with my brain. There's no way that I'm going to be able to meditate. You're asking me to sit down for like half an hour, 15 minutes to do a meditation? Are you kidding me? Like, that's not happening. And I was on conferences and I felt like meditation was like the be all and end all of mindfulness. And that's the perception that I had. And I thought, well, to be mindful is to meditate. And meditation should be like 15, 30 minutes and you sit and you put your hands on your knees and you go, ooh, with some weird music or, candles or weird hoopah stuff. And I was like, no, thanks. Not interested in that. But when I was on a conference, they were talking about mindfulness. And I found it really interesting because the one person on the conference, I can't remember who they were, but they said that, a lot of people must think that mindfulness is only meditation. But in actual fact, mindfulness is being mindful, so paying full attention to any activity that you are doing during the day. So something as simple as making a cup of tea or washing the dishes or spending time with your family or friends. And just really being present in that moment so that you can really appreciate the time that is spent with your family and your friends. And to really just try and learn something new from them. And to really just listen to them. Actively listen to them when they're talking to you. Don't look at your phone. Don't look away. Don't do something else. Just really sit and look at them and just really be present. Pay attention to what they're saying. Ask them to clarify things that they've said. Ask them questions about themselves that you've not asked them before. Be curious. And in these small moments, it's amazing the kind of joy that you can find when you really pay attention to what you're doing. To what you're doing. Just really taking it in. and letting the people in your life know just how much you appreciate them. It's quite common on the journey of recovery to get very self-involved. And that is a very important part of the recovery journey, is you need to get really into yourself. You need to really find out who you are as a person, what you want, how you feel about things, what your values are, whether you are living for those values, the boundaries that you need to create, the learning to hold those boundaries even when people try and test them, which they will, because, we are human, and, everybody else like us just doesn't like change. So when you change things, then people are going to try and fight against that a little bit. And if you hold your boundaries, then they know that this is something that you're not going to compromise on. And that requires a lot of self-reflection. But sometimes you can get so caught in it and you don't really realize how it's affecting the people around you. Because there are a lot of people around you who will help you, and people who will be concerned about you, whether that's family or friends, work colleagues, animals, because animals are really good at knowing when you're not okay. And they are a brilliant resource for calming your nervous system down. We are social creatures. We need others to help us regulate our nervous systems, especially if you're a traumatized person. You need that help and support to regulate yourself. And so you need to rely on the people around you, animals, friends, colleagues, to hold space for you and to ground you. And it's important to show your appreciation to them for doing that. And understand that if people really care about you, they will want to help you. They will want to understand how you are feeling, why you are feeling that way. And they will want to support you through your journey of recovery. But you also need to appreciate that person, because there aren't many people like that. And the ironic thing is through appreciating others that help and support you, that actually makes you better as well. So really just pay attention and appreciate living in the moment. And tell the people around you how much you appreciate their support. And really just be curious about what you do and why you do it, and whether that conforms to the values that you have, or whether you're doing it because of somebody else's values. One of the biggest parts of my journey of recovery was realizing that the values that I held weren't actually truly mine. They are values that had been instilled in me since I was a child. But I hadn't really thought about whether those values were ones that I wanted to live by or should live by. And so during my journey of recovery, I have been doing a lot of research about values. And I really explored, what are my values? Not the values that I think I should have or that people tell me I should have, but the ones that truly express who I am and who I want to be. And once we find these values, we can then construct our boundaries around those values. And then after we've done that, we then need to communicate these new values and boundaries to the people around us. And we need to tell them why we have changed these values and boundaries. And we need to educate them that it's okay for people to have their own values and boundaries. And we also need to really assert those boundaries, because people will try and push them, not necessarily out of spite or because they want to do anything wrong, or that they're doing it maliciously or anything like that. That's not the reason why. It's just because they're not used to you having these boundaries, and it's going to take them a while to get used to it. And the way that you're going to help them to do that is by maintaining those boundaries. And when they try and push past those boundaries, tell them it's not okay. You're not going to push past this boundary. But do it in a kind way. Remind them about why you have that boundary, and tell them that you're not willing to compromise on it. And tell them it's coming out of a place of kindness. You are not trying to be spiteful. You are just trying to live your true